All right, so now we have the torso down. Now we can start moving on to the head. So as always, we're just going to kind of look at the shape and what it's trying to do and figure out a primitive that fits along with it. So just looking at this and just knowing Lego Man in general, I'm actually holding one right now. The closest thing that would probably fit this is going to be a cylinder. So we're just going to go right here. I'll zoom out a little bit and go to create, polygon primitive, cylinder. All right. So from right here, what we can do is now I'm just going to go and pull this up to right here and start scaling this in. So one of the things that you have to be wary about is how do you scale? So we always like to scale stuff uniformly unless we know exactly what we're trying to go for, which means we want to keep this round. So we want to make sure that we're using this center square. This allows us to uniformly scale it, because if we try to go right here and just kind of scale it this way, which looks a lot more precise, we end up with this right here, because essentially what we were doing was just skewing our shape. So again, be careful with this. Always make sure every step you take, every move you make, I don't want to sing the rest of the song, but you are double checking everything. So we'll just go right here, scale it down uniformly. And as you can see now, this is a little bit too tall, a little bit too low. We can either scale right here, or if we want to be a little bit more precise, just go right here to right click, vertex, and move that down and move that up. All right. So a few things that you may have noticed so far. So one, we just did this middle face right here, but we still have to do the tip of the head and also the bottom of the neck. Also, we are not taking into consideration these curves, because those curves are a little bit more of a secondary detail. That's something that we will go back and polish on later. But since this is actually part of our blocking out phase for the neck and the head, and we know that that is all one piece, we need to go ahead and model that in. So from here, we've already did primitives. That's that main tool. Now it's us asking questions of what we need to do next. And if we look right here, we ask ourselves, hey, can I build that stem on the top and its neck with the geometry that's there, or do I need more geometry? And if the answer is we need more geometry, then that leads us to the extrude tool. So let's go right here, and what we want to do is just select these top faces right here. And then go to right click, face, select the top. And instead of trying to select them one by one holding down shift, I like to select the top and then hold down control. That will allow me to deselect. If you look at my cursor, we can actually see the minus sign when I'm holding down control. And that will deselect that bottom. So now only the top is there. So now I'm going to go right here and hit shift right click and hit extrude. Now when I do that, it's off to the side because this is what we call local mode or object mode. We don't want to be in that right now, so we're going to switch gears by clicking this on and off symbol, or at least that's what it looks like, and that will allow us to go back into world mode, which means now all these faces have a one main pivot that it's going off of. And we're just going to scale that in, and we're going to shift right click, extrude again, and this time I can just kind of pull up on the blue arrow. That way I can get the stem. Now you probably noticed I'm not paying attention to these right here because, well, until I actually pulled that stem up, it was very hard to see what was going on here. So what I wanted to do was just kind of get it out there, and I can actually make adjustments from there. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this down to where it meets the top of this little peg. But then we can already see that this is way too thick. So to make that adjustment, what we want to do is just select all these faces on the side. And to do that, very quickly, we can go ahead and select one face, hold down shift, double click the face next to it, and that will select everything inside of the edge ring. Now from there, we can use scale, but use a specific form of scale, which is we want to only scale it in the Z and the X axis. But we don't want it to move whatsoever, because whatsoever in the y-axis, because if we try to do this right here, we get this weird, almost like bowl looking shape, and it's just a little bit too much. So instead, what we want to do is hold down Control, and then click and drag on the axis that we do not want to affect this object. So we have Y, hold down Control, drag on the Y. As you can see, now it's actually tapering in. It's also, well, not tapering, that's not the right word. It's actually shrinking in diameter without actually getting bigger or thicker in the top and bottom. And that's what we want to do. Is just kind of bring it down until it like matches up. As you can see, we're a little bit off right here. So what we can do is go back into object mode, bring up our translate tool, and just move that back. As you can see, now it's actually fitting up nice and clean. All right, now we did that. Now we just need to do the neck as well too. So we're just going to repeat the same process that we did on the peg on the top. I'm going to select all the bottom faces, hold down Control, deselect all the side ones. Now again, double check everything. Just make sure that nothing else is selected. So a good indicator is my pivot seems to be in the right place. The pivot will always try to go to the center of your selection. So if we see it like hop up right here when we know we only want these selected, well, we know something else random is selected. So, but we're going to double check that selection. And then we're just going to do the same thing. Now we're going to use a different form of extruding, and I'll probably use this a lot for the remaining of the videos because it's a lot simpler, but we have to be careful about it, which is if we hold down Shift, we can hover over our scale tool, and it also works with the translate tool as well. And we can use that to extrude. So holding down Shift, we will actually see the cursor change to extrude. And now if I hit the translate tool hotkey, which is W, and hold down Shift again, now I can kind of pull this down. So very quickly we can do that. So same extrude tool, just multiple ways of getting to that. And then thing is, now we need to just make sure that his neck is the right thickness, which it's not. So we're just going to go right here, do the same thing, select one face, double click the face next to it. And then we're going to hit R to scale, and then we're just going to constrain the Y that way it gets the right thickness. So again, that's just Control and using the axis that you don't want it to be moved in. So Control, dragging on the axis that you don't want to influence it. And then the last part is that even though we are building in pieces, we want to make sure that things look like they're snapped together. They are part of each other. We don't want heads like hovering above the torso. This isn't Halloween unless it happens to be October when you watch this. Still, we need to make sure that the head is attached to the torso. So to do that, we're just going to use snapping. So we're just going to grab all these verts right there, hit W to bring up my translate tool. And we're just going to click the Y, which means now it is constrained to the Y. It's not going to move anywhere else. And then I'm going to hold down V as in Victor and middle mouse click and drag on this vert on the torso. Now these are lined up perfectly with this right here. So now there is no gap between them and his head is sitting on his shoulders. All right. And now that we did that, we have a very good block out of our Lego Man's head. Take care.